Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and they finally did it. They finally confirmed Legion Remix is now officially arriving sometime soon. They never got us a date, but at least they did confirm that it is arriving, and they gave us a little bit more info as to some of the content that it's going to have. If you've never played a remix version of expansion, and Mop Remix was the last one, I really think you missed out. The amount of content and the ways to experience the content of Mop Remix, the dungeons, the raids, the quest lines, and everything all restored as they were, to be able to give it a bit of a fresher coat of paint while also allowing players to earn a variety of expansion-specific rewards was truly special. And being able to re-experience one of the most fan-favorite expansions out there, Legion, is just going to be absolutely legendary. Not only did we have confirmation of Legion Remix, but also we have more updates regarding Mythic Plus system, and they're looking to expand that even further since that was the time when M Plus was introduced during Legion, allowing players to create absolutely insanely powerful characters, but also face absolutely unfathomable rewards in return. But also finding new ways to improve on open world content, taking a page out of a game like Diablo to try to find a way to make the world and open world content a little bit more deadly, but also more rewarding. But also, if you're not a fan of Legion or remix systems in general, apparently even more content is on the horizon if you're looking for something fresh out of World of Warcraft. As always, if you guys want to see more regular updates for either War Within or future content updates for Legion Remix, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. But otherwise, let's dive right in. Now, as we talk about everything we know so far regarding the Legion Remix, keep in mind there's going to be a lot more to come out later down the line. They'll have a lot more additional information, but they did give us enough here to at least get us excited as to what type of content we may be able to get for this remix. The Pandara remix was awesome, but Legion in comparison has a lot more content, which is really cool. I mean, besides, just dungeons and the raids, which there was actually a lot of dungeons for the season. The open world content was awesome, world quests, wither training with the Nightborn faction, secret class quests, and even just class experiences within the open world was really cool. The Mage Tower was great. And the world was filled with so many different rares and treasures, and even like the little individual experiences when it comes to open world for each class were very different. As a warrior, as a paladin, as a rogue, as a mage, as a warlock, everywhere you go in the open world, like you'll have a slightly different experience like everybody else. And while we can't really show off every single class out there when it comes to some of the different experiences you had within your order halls, everybody's were different. Like rogues had access to a black market auction house vendor right in the order hall, right in the doorstep. There's a vendor that sells you artful dodging shoulder vest as well as the gloves. And then there's also a mask that you can get, which I've been using in quite a bit on my rogue as of recently. We have literally a vendor here that allows me to do pickpocketing minigame out in the open world and then buy toys as well as other goodies. So if you just want to get a bunch of these masks, this is probably one of the best ways to obtain literally every single one of them. And while other classes may have like a challenging arena for warriors or potentially like a mini games that you can play as a shaman, rogues instead have literally a trove of treasures in the back, as well as Pandaria treasures that you can venture into and then find these keys inside of Lei Shen's palace and then sneak around, get a bunch of treasures, and then potentially come out with some fantastic loot like hidden skins for artifact weapons. Speaking of artifact weapons, the replayability of these weapons by itself has been amazing. From the different reskins and different types of weapons that you can get, from the different recolorations, as well as the Mage Tower weapons, which are some of the best ones out there. They're just so good looking, and the acquisition method for all of them are so interesting. There's even a secret one for rogues. You got the Thunder Fury weapons, literally, and you got them in 4 different color formats, and every single class had a different quest line just for this alone. The storylines for these order halls for each class was also different, which added so much to the replayability for every single class. I mean, the missions and having to wait for a while for those mission tables to complete wasn't great, but that's something they could potentially fix in the future. Though, like in Mop Remix, they are looking to change a couple of these systems, and if they are going to be bringing back anything that will be able to grind out, like in Pandaria was the cloak, it's assumed right now that probably it's going to be the artifact weapons of Legion making a return for us to regrind the map back up as part of the remix. I'm sure they're going to make that a little bit less grindy compared to how it originally dropped. They're also looking to change some of the systems, and if they can make some of like Legion Legendaries acquisition a little bit easier, that's also a possibility. But then they're also looking to expand some of the other systems and then keep some of the ones that actually did work. And many players really enjoyed the replayability of classes thanks to the order hall system, so hopefully something like that will stay in the future. But like I said, Even more details are going to be coming out at some time in the future. They did give us 2 specific features that this remix expansion or remix experience is going to have compared to Mists of Pandaria, as they're still going to have dungeons, they're still going to have raids, they're still going to have open world content and collectathons and achievements and so many different things for you to obtain. But then they also want to introduce 2 game modes. One of them is an expansion on an existing game mode, but another is actually something different and something I'm really excited for. The first one being Mythic Plus system, as Mythic Plus Keystones was a thing introduced during Legion. It was initially added during this expansion, and it ended up evolving throughout time, throughout seasons, throughout expansions, and it's probably one of the best systems they've ever added to the game. It gave dungeons so much more longevity. You didn't just do a couple of forgettable instances and then you never came back to them. Just doing mostly raids, and the dungeons kind of just was like abandoned content in a way. Now you can actually go back and do dungeons and get competitive gear from those dungeons and have it its own like ecosystem of progression where players can push up those keys that are infinitely scaling to get and be able to obtain some of the best rewards out there. And it's really, really cool. The M Plus version, the M Plus audience in particular, is actually going to get treated good as part of Legion Remix, and they're getting a new variation of the M Plus content that allows for that infinite scaling using the gear and the power-ups and the upgrades that we had in Mists of Pandaria. So in Mob Remix, you really get to create some really busted, overpowered characters to the point where no matter how much damage Garrosh Mythic did to you, whether you're a tank, whether you're a healer or a DPS, at some point you could basically break the game and make a character nearly unkillable in majority of content. Like, it was actually very difficult to take players down, and with the right set of gems and right set of abilities, you actually could be practically immortal. So they're really trying to test that kind of like, hey, make the strongest characters possible. We're gonna tune up the Mythic Plus system so that you could actually try to break the game, and we'll have the game try to break you in return. So they're going to allow for that infinite scaling to really see just how much players can push that high-end content and absolutely obliterate the content. So it's going to be really, really cool that they're continuing to expand on it. This is something a lot of players wanted to see. So it'll be an opportunity for players to truly min-max their characters and try some of the toughest fights out there. I'm assuming Mythic raids are going to be tuned up a little bit, just so there's quite a bit of difficulty, but they're mostly going to be, I think, similar to Mists of Pandaria. I think where majority of that big challenge and infinite scaling for Mythic Plus could potentially allow players to reach some of the highest peaks out there, which could be a ton of fun. Another feature they really want to work on when it comes to Legion is world content, and Legion was fantastic for open world content, introduced you with so many different activities for players to do that didn't necessarily raid, didn't necessarily do dungeons or PvP. This is way before delves were a thing, and Legion gave players content in spades. The world was pretty amazing. I mean, I'm pretty sure the world quest system more or less started properly in Legion. The open world filtered with a bunch of rares and treasures. I think they took that idea from Warlords of Jenner and really found a way to really implement it in a correct way. And there's so many little events and world bosses to explore in Legion 2. So then they really want to give open world content its own kind of like content, kind of paint, I guess, in the best way to put it, by taking a page from the Diablo system, and how in Diablo, when it comes to open world content in that game, you can basically increase the difficulty of the open world just through the basic activities. And essentially they want to take the Torment system, where you can increase and upscale the difficulty of open world and really crank it up, allowing WoW players in Legion Remix to do similar thing for their Legion Remix open world content called Shattered Timeline, which is essentially a timeline where, what if instead of us fighting against the Burning Legion and maybe even combating them in some degree, what if we could actually go into a shattered timeline where everything went wrong and everything got bad and every single enemy out in the open world is an absolute monstrosity, super difficult to deal with, and the world is absolutely a terrifying place? Is there a way for them to make challenging open world content through the system? And that's essentially what they want to try to do. I think that's actually pretty cool, because I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of cool rewards with this system, and maybe they could reshape the world in a very different way. So instead of having like a very tranquil Val Shara, you'll probably see a lot more pockets of fel in the area, burning trees lit up in fel flame, a lot more demons and powerful beasts walking around for you to slay, maybe very difficult enemies that are, you know, gonna take a group of players to take down, but potentially some of the best rewards out there if you do. And I actually think that's kind of cool. I think it's them trying to find a way to cater to the more solo player content, since they won't have things like delves in the Legion Remix. But so if you're someone who doesn't get into dungeons, doesn't have a group for M+, or doesn't necessarily do raiding that much, you at least have some sort of a challenging version of open world content for you to take on. And that's another thing that I saw a lot of people over time, over the past few years, really ask for, is a way for them to make challenging open world content. They couldn't quite do that with War Within. They were able to do that with Delta Thing to some degree, and they made them a lot better when it comes to the reward structure, as well as the content that you can perform in Delta. I think that's been mostly healthy, but finding ways to make open world a bit more challenging, I think could be interesting, because if they're successful with this system, they could possibly maybe make it its own game mode at some point in the future for just base retail WoW, which maybe could be kind of fun. However, besides Legion Remix, if Remix in general is just not really up to your playfield, and really if you missed out on Mob Remix, I would definitely give Legion Remix a try. Pin it on your calendar and experience it. Mob Remix was worth the time. It was a ton of fun, a big fan of it. But apparently they got even more experiences in the future. Not quite Remix, but if the Remix doesn't sound fun to you, then this potentially might. They enjoyed the idea of Plunderstorm, the PvP Battle Royale version of WoW, and they found it to be very successful as a standalone mode. Over at PAX, they did mention that they found that there's not everybody in WoW that plays WoW enjoys PvP necessarily, and a lot of players really do enjoy like non-Battle Royale, very arcadey style modes. For the most part, when people play WoW and they properly level the character, they really do enjoy the leveling, the questing, the raids, the group activities. But then at the same time, even though majority of the gameplay audience doesn't necessarily lean towards like PvP Battle Royale style modes, a lot of players did find Plunderstorm a lot of fun in particular, in numbers that they really did not expect, which made it a huge success, and that's why they brought it back kind of recently for players to experience before 11.1 update. So they have a desire to give player base that like the type of Taken WoW aesthetic, Taken WoW gameplay, Taken WoW skeleton, and finding new ways to experiment with it and play with it to create something different out of it. They want to find a way to feed the audience a little bit more. So while they can't really necessarily announce a brand new mode just yet, they did say it's going to be a little bit more story-based and a little bit have a scarier vibe to it. And I think with just that alone, the fan theorists could potentially run wild in that place. It's not going to be a battle royale mode, but it's going to build off of the basics of what Plunderstorm was and finding new ways for players to interact and play with WoW as a game in itself. So that's about all they gave us. They didn't really give us too much info, but know that even more stuff is on the horizon, which is plenty exciting. So whether you're someone who's excited about Legion Remix or potentially future game modes in the future to experience WoW in a brand new way, at the very least, they definitely have a lot of awesome ideas. So if anything, it does seem like we're going to have some fantastic holdover content that will keep us all entertained and busy until the next expansion of Midnight, which should hopefully maybe be getting some sort of an announcement or at least even more hints towards that expansion sometime soonish. We are drawing towards the patch 11.2 for War Within very soon, maybe potentially the final season of this expansion, and based on the roadmap for 2025, it did seem like that's basically where they're going to be wrapping it up and rolling out Midnight, which from what we know has been worked on side by side with War Within. So imagine quite a bit of progress has already been done on that expansion. Just makes you wonder just how early it's going to be until we finally get to sink our teeth into the next chapter of the World Soul Saga. So with that being said, as always, I do want to thank all of you guys so much for watching and hope you guys did enjoy this quick update. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, go ahead and give this video a like. I would very much appreciate it. Join our Discord community to keep up with all the regular live updates like patch notes for classes or any of the tuning updates, patch 11.17, or whatever they get any more Legion Remix updates. We'll definitely have discussions over those topics as well. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and as always, I'll see all of you guys in the next one.